With Singapore reporting just 2 community cases today, ST senior health correspondent Salma Khalik says it's time to resume travel with certain precautions in place.
What rush hour looks like at Raffles Place, no rush of workers, even with the relaxing of rules at workplaces starting this morning.
Getting the facts out and putting them in context. On World News Day, we focus on the work of journalists making a difference.
It's about making the case to the audience about why real news matters, not just to us journalists, but to everyone in the community, so that you can get good, credible information to the audience. This is why it's so important to the health and well-being of our societies.
Hello, you're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Olivia Quay.
Now I'm Haryanto Dimana. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
Well, let's start with COVID-19 numbers here. 15 new cases were confirmed today. They included 2 community cases, both work pass holders.
There were also 6 imported cases who had been placed on stay-home notice upon their arrival in Singapore. Now more details will be released tonight.
You know, Haryanto, December holidays coming, a traditionally period when, families travel overseas. Of course, we can't do that at the moment, but is it time for travel to start again with safeguards in place?
We explored this topic last week, and in a piece today, senior health correspondent Salma Khalik writes that there is no reason why tourism travel cannot also resume in a limited way with certain precautions. So she lists a few ways travel could work.
That's right. Well, one way to handle incoming visitors would be to not quarantine them if their visit is limited to certain areas and to have precautions taken to prevent them from passing the disease to the local community. That means such visitors have to stick to a predetermined itinerary. For example, certain hotels could be used exclusively for them. Restaurants and other facilities at these hotels will be closed to locals. Staff serving visitors will have to stay on site or in designated places.
The tourists may be taken on tours but should not be allowed to leave the tour bus. Alternatively, certain tourist attractions could be reserved exclusively for tourists for a couple of days a week. Staff working on so-called tourist days would need to take precautions, and everything has to be disinfected before the local days.
Well, similar tours could be organized for Singaporeans wanting to travel overseas, where all activities are in a confined area. These travelers will need to serve quarantine or stay-home notice on their return to Singapore, but they will be quarantined only once, not twice.
Salma joins us now to take this discussion further. Hi Salma. Salma, you proposed a few scenarios and measures for inbound and outbound travellers. Some experts say, though, that these are difficult to implement reliably. Others say unrestricted tourism from countries with minimal or very low levels of transmission should be allowed. Is there a compromise there?
Well, actually, I think everything in COVID-19 is a matter of compromising. So it depends very much on our ability to cope with visitors, whether we can have them come in and not infect our locals. So these are just suggestions I've thrown out. We need the experts to really look at them and see how they can be implemented and whether they can be implemented safely. My whole point of the story is actually to get people talking and thinking about this subject.
Right. Well, people are definitely talking about travel, right, whenever we can do that. So we already have green lanes with a few countries, as well as general travel arrangements with New Zealand and Brunei. So as Singapore continues to discuss opening its borders with other parts of the world, some will with a more nuanced, fluid approach address concerns about safety.
Well, you see, the trouble is when it comes to travel, one country doesn't decide. It's never a unilateral decision. It has to depend on the other side. You mentioned New Zealand and Brunei, for example. So we have opened up to visitors from those places. The question is, they have not reciprocated, so we can't have Singaporeans going there. Travel is always a two-way process, and it depends on the other countries. Countries that have a lot of COVID-19, for example, have quite porous borders. They really don't care. So, for example, I'm sure we have no problems going to the US or to Britain. Do we want people to go there?
Now, say more travellers are allowed in. Does Singapore have the manpower and resources to carry out safe management measures and other logistical concerns, especially if measures are going to be long-term?
Right. Okay. When people come in, at the moment, they have to stick to a fixed itinerary. So that's easy to manage. It's only when visitors are allowed in and allowed to do roam around freely like they used to, then the problems may arise. The other question you need to ask is, where are these people coming in from? If they're coming from countries where there is very, very low community transmission, then the chances are it'll be quite safe. I guess we have to manage on the run. You have so many people coming in, and then you see how the society manages, whether it leads to an increase in COVID cases. If it doesn't, then maybe we can increase the numbers a little bit more. And we need to do it a step at a time. You can't say suddenly, okay, right, I'll open all my doors and everybody can come in. You can't do that. So if you do it one step at a time, I'm sure we should be able to manage.
Moving away from travel, as you know, 1 million people around the world have died from COVID-19, and it's of course a grim milestone that was passed over the weekend. So we're still waiting for a viable vaccine, and seeing how different countries have managed the pandemic, does it sort of signal how they respond when a vaccine does become available? Because we're already seeing wealthier nations snapping up the vaccine stocks.
Yes, well, that's a bit difficult because government is responsible to its own people, and yet, they need to have a social conscience to help the countries that are not as well off. WHO has started this COVAX facility, of which Singapore is a signatory. The idea of that is to try to make sure that poorer countries do get their share of vaccines. Countries also must realize that if you vaccinate only your population, then you still cannot travel. You can't open your borders. Whereas if globally we can bring COVID-19 under control, then the world's economy will go back to normal a lot faster. So again, it depends very much on the vaccine production. If there is enough, I'm sure the richer countries don't mind paying for extra vaccines to help others. But if the production is very limited and there isn't that much to go around, then you can't be surprised that countries say, I need at least so many for my own people first before I worry about everybody else.
Well, Salma, thank you so much for joining us today. We've been speaking to senior health correspondent at the Straits Times, Salma Khalik.
You can read both of Salma's pieces over at straitstimes.com. The links are in the description below if you're watching us on YouTube.
Well, more than 33 million confirmed cases, over 1 million deaths. Well, around the world, COVID-19 has devastated people's lives and economies.
Here in Asia, speaking to the Straits Times, an ICU doctor, a nurse and a gravedigger provide first-hand accounts of their experience with the coronavirus.
Sebagai manusia ya rasa was-was ada, semua pasti merasakan rasa was-was ada, cuman ya dibawa enjoy aja, dibawa riang aja, jangan terlalu memikirkan, jangan terlalu stres. Ntar kalau stres bukannya malah terkena COVID ya susah juga, kena stres ntar sakit. Kami berdoa di sini biar pandemi ini cepat berlalu.
코로나와의 싸움은 감염병과의 지금 전쟁이라고 생각을 합니다. 그리고 간호사와 모든 의료진은 이 감염병의 코로나와 최전선에서 싸움을 벌이는 군인들입니다. 그 싸움에서 의료진들은 반드시 승리할 겁니다. 모두 힘내시고 코비드 아웃.
我觉得武汉人民是非常的勇敢，而且非常的团结。在武汉的每一天，我都感觉到来自于全城市，包括全社会的普通的民众对我们医疗队员的支持。这也是我们最终能打赢这场战争的，我觉得一个重要保证。我觉得我们现在只能说是取得了阶段性的一个胜利，我们对于这种疾病的了解还太有限了。 我觉得更多的是未来需要医疗人员和所有的研究人员、科学家共同努力，去更加真实的还原这种疾病的本质，更加真实的能够认识这种疾病的发展规律，从而更好的去治疗这种病人。所以说，我觉得面对这种疾病，应该我们还是任重道远。
1 million lives lost COVID-19 through my eyes. You can watch the whole video on the Straits Times YouTube page.
In the local headlines today, according to the National Heritage Board and National Gallery Singapore, visitors are returning to museums, although attendances have not recovered to pre-pandemic levels. Average monthly visitorship to the Asian Civilizations Museum and the National Museum of Singapore in August was over 12,000 and 31,000 respectively, compared with over 10,000 and 28,000 in July. NHB and NGS also report good responses for guided tours, which resumed in late August with capacity caps.
PayNow users will now be able to send more money. All of the 9 participating PayNow banks will allow ad hoc transactions of at least $5,000. The higher limit applies to PayNow on both internet banking and mobile application channels. Users may also set their PayNow limit to a level to which they're comfortable.
The number of workplace injuries fell by nearly 25%, comparing the figures between January and June last year to the first 6 months this year. This dip could likely be due to the suspension of selected workplace activities during the circuit breaker period. But the Ministry of Manpower and the Workplace Safety and Health Council noted that there were 16 workplace fatalities this year, a figure similar to the same period last year and the year before. The leading cause of fatal injuries continues to be fall from height and vehicular-related incidents.
Well, there was no rush of workers in the CBD this morning, even after the easing of restrictions at offices.
But for those who have returned to their workplace, they are glad to be back. Multimedia journalist Chow Suen reports from Raffles Place.
We're standing here today at the Central Business District, and it's just before 9 a.m. on the first day where more are allowed back in their offices. Last week, authorities announced that more employees will be allowed to return to the workplace, although safe management measures must be in place and flexible working hours and staggered reporting times are encouraged. The Straits Times visited the Central Business District last Friday and today to see if there has been a dramatic increase in the footfall in the area. It's lunchtime now, and as you can see behind me, there's a steady stream of people coming to and from their offices or heading out for a quick bite. So we stopped a few people to see how they feel about being back at the office.
Oh, it's great. I think there's a lot more flow, there's a lot more traffic flow. Much better than working from home. As long as you keep to the distance, and I think a lot of restaurants or a lot of shops, they do have their own, imposed distancing measures. So I think that's still quite safe. I feel very safe coming back to the office.
Given I'm a parent of 2 young kids, it's actually more productive coming to office to work, given I'm in a financial market. If, let's say, someone is wanting to invest in my fund, without meeting in person, I think it's kind of difficult.
In certain circumstances, working from home is a necessity, but I would say being a little bit traditional and old-fashioned, the bond you have with your managers and your colleagues when you're working in the office is something that cannot be replaced. And I don't think anyone should be so worried, especially coming back to CBD area.
I am a person who needs routine, so to me, office environment is the best environment for me to work at office. So I request to my supervisor to work at office full time. Most of my colleagues prefer working at home, so there was no fight over the slot.
Working from home was good originally when we first started. I thought my productivity was better, but then after a while, I don't know, with everyone working from home and not getting that interaction, the motivation kind of disappeared a little bit. So long as the cases in the community are low, there's no concern on my side at the moment, no.
Well, it may seem to be bustling, the CBD is actually not any more busy than it was last week, with most of the people here seeming to have settled into quite a comfortable routine. Most of the shops and businesses also seem to be seeing a fairly regular stream of customers. Out of the 30 or so CBD workers that the Straits Times spoke to earlier today, most say that they've been here working back in their offices for at least a couple of weeks, if not more. And many seem completely unfazed and not worried at all that the CBD might soon become more crowded. This has been Chow Suen for the Straits Times.
Some global headlines this Monday. According to a report in the New York Times, US President Donald Trump paid just $750 in income taxes in 2016 and 2017. He was reported to have lost millions of dollars from his golf courses and hundreds of millions in debt that will come due in the next few years. The Times analysis also said Mr. Trump paid no income taxes in 10 of the past 15 years because he generated large losses that offset any money that he made. It added he earned $73 million abroad in his first 2 years in the White House, despite a pledge that he would pursue no new foreign deals while president. Mr. Trump has refuted the report, saying it's totally fake news and that he pays a lot without offering specifics.
Malaysian Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin's coalition has resolved its impasse in picking a chief minister candidate after winning the Sabah election. The Gabungan Rakyat Sabah parties agreed on Mr. Muhyiddin's personal pick for the post, Sabah Perikatan Nasional Chief Hajiji Mahaban Noor. The Sabah Palace announced that a swearing-in ceremony will take place tomorrow morning, but it's yet to confirm the identity of the new chief minister.
Meanwhile, Malaysia today said it will impose strict movement restrictions in 4 districts in Sabah after reporting more than 1,000 coronavirus infections there this month. The surge in cases in Sabah comes after the state held elections over the weekend. The election was dogged by politicians testing positive for the virus as Sabah became the new epicenter of Malaysia's outbreak.
And in sports, the Miami Heat beat the Boston Celtics 125-113 to book an NBA final showdown with the LA Lakers. The Heat reaching the championship series for the 6th time in their club history with a 4-2 overall victory over the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, while Game 1 of the NBA Finals begins on Wednesday.
Many newsrooms around the globe are marking World News Day today, a reminder that journalists have always played a critical part in keeping people informed.
If anything, the COVID-19 pandemic has intensified the need for credible and reliable news given the scale and significance of the crisis.
Whether you call it the coronavirus or COVID-19, the global pandemic undoubtedly dominated news headlines worldwide in 2020. And it's still doing so. Journalists around the world have gone above and beyond to tell the many stories that matter. One story that captured the hearts of readers and that of Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong was Singapore's Case 42, or Mr. Raju Sakar.
We had one earlier case of a Bangladeshi worker who was in the ICU for 2 months. This was case number 42. We never gave up on him.
The first foreign worker to contract COVID-19, he spent nearly 5 months in hospital and had become a father during that time when his wife gave birth to their son in Bangladesh. Upon reading the story, Singaporeans reached out to him and his family, going on to wish him well and donate cartons of essentials for the baby. Over in India, another heartwarming tale was covered by The Quint, which had featured the story of Darman and Ugande, a blind couple in Tamil Nadu. Deprived of their sense of sight, their lives were thrown into further disarray when the pandemic hit.
I think what impacted people who saw the story was the fact that you didn't see them crying. They still had a lot of spirit. They still had a, we'll fix it, we'll get over it. We've been able to collect, raise over 5,80,000 rupees for them just directly through us. And these are the kind of contributions that are coming in when everyone is dealing with a financial crisis or job loss, and so it sort of restores your faith in humanity when people respond to a story of crisis and contribute and come forth the way they have.
In Indonesia, the Jakarta Post forced the hand of policymakers as cases soared.
We purposely paint a grim picture about the 6-month situation in Indonesia. I think 3 days after that, President Jokowi decided to make a big speech saying that, okay, we have to take health into consideration rather than the economy. So I think with that story, we have been successful in pressuring the government to sort of take serious action to deal with the health aspect of this pandemic.
While the world waits for a vaccine and the pandemic to stabilize, one thing is for sure, the world has changed forever. As we mark World News Day 2020, let us remember what journalism is all about and what it stands for. Journalism helps to get the facts out, put things in context, and make a difference to communities we serve.
That's really what World News Day is about. It's about making the case to the audience about why real news matters, not just to us journalists, but to everyone in the community, so that you can get good, credible information to the audience. This is why it's so important to the health and well-being of our societies.
Regardless of the platform, print, online or digital, whatever it takes to get the story, you can count on journalists to bring you the latest wherever it happens. And that is the spirit of journalism.
Be sure to catch the premiere of a very special documentary marking World News Day 2020, Journalism Through a Pandemic.
That's at 8 p.m. on the Straits Times Facebook and YouTube channels.
Well, for more news and videos, of course, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on A Big Story.